Hello, and welcome back to the latest episode of the White Pea podcast. My name is Zarina Mohammed, and a little bit of a different one today, but the same as last week, so not actually that different. But yeah, basically, it's another magazine-style podcast episode, and I don't know what to say other than because I can't say the real excuse because we are writing something that we can't talk about, we can't show you yet. You will see it eventually, but basically we make plans and God laughs. That's what's happened this week. So my sincerest, most heartfelt apologies that this is not a brand new text for you on the website, but the benefit of being ye oldie art critic and approaching 30 rapidly is that we have a whole back catalogue. This is the one good thing about aging. We have a whole back catalogue that we can pull from, like 7.5 years of writing that many of you may not have been around for, because I don't know how long you've been here. Who are you? What are you doing? When did you join? Not to turn the suspicion back on you. Apologies. But yeah, so this week's magazine-style podcast episode... Fucking hell, that's a mouthful. This week's magazine-style podcast episode is curated around the theme of sound. And now, I am, retroactively claiming that this is because, grand conspiracy, wild coincidence, serendipity and all that. Because by the time this podcast episode comes out, it will be Sunday, 16th of April, and J. Paul will have already played his set at Coachella. Now, if there is one thing that you need to know about me, is that I am J. Paul's number one fan. I don't actually know if I can claim that with any kind of real sense. I love J. Paul. That's the point. If there's one thing that you could put into a summoning circle to summon me, it would be J. Paul's album, but many other things, probably, like a little oat flat white cherry elf bar, white Nikes, a tiny painting of a horse. There are so many things, but J. Paul is one of them, one of the foundational pieces that build up the architecture of my personality. J. Paul, love J. Paul. And I think that's nice serendipity that we're doing this about sound. My text about J. Paul is one of the texts in this magazine-style podcast episode. We've got to think of a better name for it than that, but whatever, this magazine episode. And I don't know, reading it back today, I'm kind of like, yeah, I really like it when we publish reviews that are just, I love this thing and here's why, and it's like passionate fandom, like, when you really, really love something and you're trying to split the hairs, trying to figure out why. I think that is labour that is so worth it, because I wrote the text about J. Paul and just read the text about J. Paul. I love him more. I love him more for having figured out why I love him. But yeah, in general, I think sound is like a really ethereal, intangible, wispy, oh my God, ooh, it's here, now it's not, palpable. It's a bizarre medium for art to be in, right? So I think it's interesting that we've approached the subject of sound through so many different angles and through so many different artworks that handle it as a medium so differently. And maybe it's interesting to read all of these together to try and get to grips with maybe the essence of something, God knows. But yeah, I will not edit it at the end, the same as... No, do you know what? I will. So I'll tell you the emoji. You got to listen at the end. But there are 4 texts, and they are... So the first up is my review of my text about J. Paul. It's not really a review, because the review is love him. But yeah, text about J. Paul. And then there is another pre-SoundCloud, pre-audio version of the texts review of Alexandra Pirici at the New Museum in New York from 2018. There is also a review of Symphony for 20 Rooms at Den Frie Udstilling in Copenhagen, and that is from 2019. That is written by GDLP, and the last text is one that is already on the podcast, but do you know what? I think if we're talking about sound, I want to also mention this review, and it is of Ian Bailey's show version at Wysing Art Centre, and it's only from 2021. But I think in and amongst all the other different ways of talking about sound and art that uses sound and art that is sound, I want to talk about, Ian's show, because I thought it was a really good show. So those are the 4 texts. They will also be linked on the website on the page for this podcast episode, so you can read them. You can look at pictures of them, because I'm aware that actually us telling you about them is weird, especially when they're not on. Like, all 3 of those exhibitions are not on anymore. That must be a weird experience. But yeah, I hope you enjoy, and apologies again to all of our readers, all of our supporters on Patreon and PayPal. I'm so sorry that this is not a new text. Please stick with us. Thank you so much for your generosity and patience with us at the moment. I can only hope, inshallah, hopefully, your patience and your generosity here is well rewarded with amazing work at the end of this weird, wacky, long period of work. So that is all. But I will be back at the end with the emoji for you to drop on the post, and I will stop talking now in this current state, and I'll start talking about J. Paul. So this text is about J. Paul. I wrote it, I published it on the 14th of July 2019, and I've given it an emoji summary, which is interesting, but the emoji summary is the little sparkles emoji, the wave, and then the wiggly line, the wiggly black line that goes whoop whoop, like 2 little wiggles. I'm not sure what that means now in hindsight, but yeah, okay. I'm writing this text because I feel like every piece of writing I read about J. Paul and his music has been written in a specific way, either latching on to the technical or the historical canon that his music exists in, or analysing in a cultural commentary way how his impact has reverberated and functioned. None of the texts I've read have touched the sides of what his mystical impact has felt like, what his music has affected in people. The somatic currents I think he really understands. I don't want to write about hype or cultural capital or daft punk and the death of music journalism. There are music bros who rub their nuts on their mixing boards who can do that. I want to write about J. Paul like he's an artist whose work I'm encountering with my body and my gut, because that is what he is to me. I think I first heard Jasmine in 2012, an art school party. Makes sense. Dark room lit only by a sad lamp and fairy lights, bodies moving to a beat in the dark like fat grapes rolling on the floor. I was out of it, but living. I remember the Leaks album, vaguely, but J. Paul's output and trajectory has been a genuine part of his work. He was this fucking myth, this image, this elusive enigma. All anyone knew was that he did mad music and he was from Rayners Lane. He put out 2 demos on MySpace, I think, BTSTU and Jasmine. There was also a rough edit of another track called Straight Outta Mumbai, which I fucking clung to for no other reason than its pulsating rawness. This mystical crossover of a London accent that sampled an Indian beat and snippets. A friend sent me a video of a fan edit with clips from, I think, a song sequence with Helen, muddled on top, and I lost my shit. It was something I wish I'd made. In 2013, the hype surrounding him was also a pulsating mess. This vacuum of 2 demos, no albums, clips and odd bits, but nothing official. And then one night, there was a leak of an unfinished album online. His laptop was stolen and the thief posted the unfinished drafts on Bandcamp. It was kind of brutal. People accused Jay of lying and leaking it himself to serve his own mythology, but it was really obvious that these tracks were ripped from him at a halfway soft point. They weren't ready. From then till May 2019, J. Paul has been nowhere to be seen. Unless you live in Rayners Lane, then I am told he sometimes goes to the KFC near the station at lunchtime. People have been tweeting, "Where is J. Paul? Free J. Paul. I hope J. Paul is having a good day," almost weekly. In his absence, still he was present. Like Frank Ocean's 4-year hiatus, he was felt and clung to. Fuck. Isn't that so incredible? Some art school kid from northwest London made stuff so fucking good, people were raging about his absence. What a guy. J. Paul's birthday is the same day as mine. I think nearly all Cancerians are meant to be artists. There is something about astrology, Twitter, and meme makers, I think, that misunderstands our ability to process emotions and thoughts as one clean, deliverable swipe, where some astrology meme makers fall back on the external common denominator of portraying us as hypersensitive crybabies. This misses the power we have. Cancer is a cardinal water sign. We have the force and will to push things into motion. We are upheaval. We lead from the heart, say things with our entire chest, even if we go on to regret it. But that is rare. We are able to render an emotion or a feeling into palpability, enveloping in a way that can push the present into a whole new territory. It is not the damp feebleness of tears, but the slow, raging power of salt water and skin, leaving a residue. We might be the crying emoji, but we are also the cowboy emoji, all at the same time. I think where some think pieces complain about how vacuous it was that Jay fabricated hype so efficiently, with only 2 fucking demos and no official releases, they missed the root of it all. He is like a Cancer's final form, able to render his output so distinctly and honestly. It is like listening to a body from the inside. It was midnight and I was in Copenhagen. It was the 27th day of Ramadan, Laylat al-Qadr, the night of power, when the Quran was revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I was in bed scrolling through Twitter and I saw people tweeting about a new J. Paul album. I came down the next day and Gab thought I'd lost the plot because it was all I could talk about. Now, editing this text, she says, "You came to breakfast the next day like a crazy person who'd been up all night on the phone to someone they fancy, or someone who woke up early to queue to be on the first row at a concert. I was whittering on about Jasmine on Bronze being the peak of tech and art crossover, and she was baffled as to why I just bought a t-shirt and some vinyls. She said, 'Do you even have a record player?' Reader, I do." Jasmine has always been my favourite song. It's the most visible for sure, but it's also the most meticulously crafted, in my opinion. For years, I had no idea what he was actually really saying for the most of it, and to be honest, I still don't really want to know. But it is achingly, yearningly, painfully beautiful. The way the bass underneath it all rumbles in, palpable, a bodily presence through the entire track. I feel this song with my collarbones. The slapping riff over the top is level with his voice that bobs in and out of audible vision. In and within all of this cardinal energy of upheaval, I think, is also a tentative self-consciousness. His voice is never entirely audible. It is always partly hidden, or at least level with another sound that contradicts it. Melody is a slippery object. Rhythm, too. This song is hazy. It makes me feel the same way I do about Dilse, like I watched that entire film through a pane of glass. This sound mounts to a moment where the climax is a clarity and everything pushes over a peak and disintegrates yet again. This felt amplified and super identifiable with the version that's on Bronze. All clearer how the music is layered into components that drift together on Come Loose. It feels like abstraction, in the way I wrote about with Frank Bowling's work last week. And I'll link to that in the description, I think, that text, because it's quite old. Like a deconstruction and repeated deployment, reassembling obliterated parts to make something cogent or coherent in a way that is new and separate. Like a teva between the room and an astral plane. This song is meticulous. It understands the rhythm of a body, circadian and fleshy. In this way, it is magic. It is something for nothing, where why or how are the wrong question. It is opacity, pounding and tender. I am getting carried away. I am projecting hard. The album that people were tweeting about in May wasn't the debut album. It was all the bits, the drafts and unfinished snippets that were stolen and illegally released in 2013 by someone else. I feel like any thoughts I have about the album are kind of soft and unfinished. I also think measuring it against finished works is kind of an exercise in futility, because it is very clear that these are snippets, a glimpse of a halfway point. It is only a release in the sense that I think it is a releasing, as verb, of that moment. I think this makes them feel all the more chewy though. They have an interrupted kind of potential and promise that only exists in an imaginary. I feel like in and amongst a fine art audience, the bottomless horror of showing something before it's ready is all the more relatable. But we got 2 new singles equally as careful and precise as Jasmine and BTSTU. Do You Love Her Now is the same flavour of aching and longing. There is a really good text about the beauty of having a crush. I'm going to leave it here. I think J. Paul writes songs with limerence in mind, like glistening, glittering water. He makes songs where sound just fucking shimmers, like a fucking slow jam with the car roof down. It's a weird kind of cool, underwater sensuality that is too slippery for me to grip onto at the moment. Reflective, heavy and bursting, like sun streaming through grey clouds after rain. It is a puncture to an external air of mystery by firmly and solidly planting itself in the realm of the body as it slowly moves. Soft falsetto, rumbling bass again, moaning guitar, synth, whatever the fuck it is on top with the pinging bits. I think this is the music of a person who finds empowerment in the cleansing truth of their emotion unbound. You can feel it. His very insides are in the music. It's all felt with a sincerity that is tangible. There is power in naked vulnerability, truth. It is upheaval and it is force, water crashing against wet sand. It is in processing, raw, corporeal, somatic chaos, filtering that through the body and pressing it into a tightly compressed diamond with your very fists. His music is meticulous art. Turn yourself inside out. Isn't there a beauty in the power of what tears can render? This review is from the 15th of April 2018, and it was written by both me and Gabrielle collaboratively. I actually remember writing this really distinctly in the Airbnb. We in an Airbnb in Williamsburg. And I remember both me and Gab were in bed and I was typing on her laptop. And that may or may not be an actual true memory, but I really vividly remember it. But I'm actually recording the audio for this for the first time because this text predates our audio versions of the reviews, like of the texts. Isn't that crazy? The audio versions always feel like something that we've always done, but it's not that new. Like we've not been doing it for, I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years because 2018, right? Like, but, sorry, I'm cutting myself off there because who cares? But, yeah, first time recording this text in audio, and I'm now thinking that, like, note to self, note to ZM to do, go back and record old text because there's, like, probably, 3 years worth of, 2.5 years, actually, worth of texts that are maybe for the best, actually, not in audio. Do you know what? Scratch that from the to-do list because I don't think before this point in time probably shit anyway from my end at least. But yeah, it's been a minute and a half. You're impatient with me. I'm impatient with myself. This is a review of Alexander Piricci at the New Museum, and we wrote this. Yeah, we went to teach at Rhode Island School of Design, and then we spent another 5 days in New York just on an art holiday, getting to grips with another city. And this was one of the reviews that popped out of that. The emoji summary is the circle with a black line, white inside, yellow sun, but the yellow sun with like a circle and then lines, not the sun with a face, not the sun without a face with the triangles on the edge. It's like a brightness symbol, sun. And then the floating guy, the floating guy with the suit, and he's kind of levitating, and you can see a shadow on the ground. It's very Magritte. I don't know what you'd even call that emoji, really. I'm hovering above it. Nothing's appearing. Unknown. But yeah. Galleries are holes in a city. They are dark vacuums you fall into, away from air and sky. I see them very literally as holes, I think. Like, I hold my breath as I walk into them. So when I leave, it often feels like a relief. I don't think it's just the institutional or cultural pressure that makes that discomfort. A big part of it is how weird art is in the first place. I haven't seen enough David Attenborough to say this for sure, but no other animal arranges colours, shapes and sounds in a room and then invites other animal peers to come and look at it, come and look at what they've done and talk about how they have behaved. Art is pernickety, very strange, and that's where we're coming from when we write our exhibition reviews. Always figuring that out. That stance was urgent on my mind this week with us being in the US, specifically New York, a hypercity, all straight lines and posture. We were at the new museum and saw the rooms showing the triennial, big art exhibition they put on every 3 years. But it made me feel like a tired alien wondering why humans do art in the first place. But outside of the triennial and at the bottom of the museum, next to the foyer, was a long dark room with an installation by artist Alexandra Piricci called Co-Natural. There was a square light box on the floor, and across from that, a transparent pyramid with a hologram projected and trapped inside, of a man in a blue t-shirt standing full length. In silence, he moves. I didn't watch him. He slipped through my gaze, to be quite honest, because from behind the pyramid, a person emerged, singing. It was wild, but imagine I am whispering wild because of the level of that sound. Its quality was full, choral, streaming out of this body mouth, and somehow so casual. It was operatic and sad, and very quickly I remembered, oh yeah, I do like art, because where the triennial had the visitor stepping from piece to piece between art that was so protectively located inside its own skin, and stubbornly so, Piricci's installation downstairs was inside out. Its edges were flapping in the wind. It had the right conditions to allow for a transformative aesthetic experience. Dislocated, suddenly, and I was falling down the art hole, but happily for once, because I always feel like that type of aesthetic experience happens to you, rather than seeing a very contained art and you having to work on yourself so you can happen to it and activate its meaning. This was open. The invigilator was smiling at me, smiling at the room, so we got talking, and he told me the performers changed depending on the time and day. When we went, it was Miguel Angel Guzman singing. Angel, angel, angel. The invigilator said everyone loves Miguel, and I can't tell you the words the performer sang, a language I don't understand. I love how, when that happens, specificity dissolves into sound plus feeling. Their voice filled the room around the objects and the people within it, inhabiting empty space well, filling up around us like water does to a body in a bath. This review has to be specific to the performer that day, whose voice had a certain weight in the space that was not quite presence, but like, it took up space. It was tangible. Have you ever seen Sonia Boyce's work, For You, Only You? I think about that work a lot. The way sound fills up this beautiful wholeness that can only really happen with the human voice. I wrote about this a bit at the beginning of my review of Mani Sandhu's Welcome to the Future. If you didn't read it, obviously do. Don't. I'll link it, but don't read it. Oh my God. Where I said, all instruments do is one or two, maybe three different flavours of sound. The human voice stretches into any and every flavour. It has a malleable quality. When someone sings, even against a full orchestra, there is still space for the human voice in a cacophony of noise. It has the ability to assume rather than be. It can adjust, bend in a way nothing man-made can. It can sit, glimmering like a jewel in the mud. This says what I want to articulate about the way the human voice can command space, because that's what this performance kind of did. I liked that the hologram person in the pyramid was banal, part of the furniture in a way that meant the digitality of the installation was banal. That we can use technology in our vocabulary towards other feelings without getting stuck on unpicking the digital itself. Part of experience enough now that we admit how we harness it. The lightbox was sometimes a stage that Miguel stood or sat on for a moment, every so often becoming a statue between his general movement round the gallery space. As a whole installation, the work was very calm and confident in a way I enjoy. Like, while we've been in New York, we've eaten a lot of food to the point it's basically been a gastro holiday. Pericci's work made me think of a tiny restaurant we went to this week in Chinatown called Tasty Hand-Pulled Noodles Inc., where we had bowls of broth with hand-pulled noodles and it was enough. Have you had bread so fresh and right on its own that you don't even want any spread? Because with those noodles, you didn't need a topping, didn't expect or miss meat as a part of the event of the dish. When literal components are good through and through, made with care and practice and given to you cleanly, you don't need anything more. It is nice when things rest on that level, slight and minimal, confidence in knowing when to stop or how much is enough to leave you satisfied, but not full up in a bad way. There were exhibition visitors sitting all around the space in awe, and the art made us stay too, because here was recovery from the triennial noise, from city noise, from everything being bigger than I'd ever seen before. I appreciated Pericci's work so much. Slowly, quietly confident. A happy wholeness. This review was written by Gabrielle in June 2019. For some reason, I can't find the original SoundCloud audio, so a quick apology that it's me reading this when it should be read in her voice, but I'm gonna do my best to embody the spirit of Gabrielle. I'm not gonna do the accent, that's rude, but yeah, it's a review of Symphony for 20 Rooms at Den Frie Udstilling in Copenhagen. Oh, and the emoji summary is the little sound emoji, like, you know, the little speaker with the sound, the little blue rings of sound. A chicken, I think a rooster, actually. It's not chicken, it's a rooster. No, that's a chicken. That's a chicken. White chicken with a red, it's a chicken. And then the skull emoji. I've left writing this review till the last minute because I don't know how to resolve my thoughts around what I saw in a gallery last weekend. This sounds dramatic, and I guess it is a little bit. But honestly, fuck it. I'm in a rainy and loud conservatory, house sitting, sat across from my boyfriend, splitting a Greg's chocolate muffin, and I'm just going to see what the fuck comes out my fingers today as I type. So, my job is mad. We know this. Being an art critic means I'm constantly taking my own temperature and figuring out if I don't like an exhibition because of the mood I'm in, the weather, my own personality and interests, or because something about it feels morally wrong. Face twists and gurning, and making question marks with my expression, like, wow, they really went there, or they didn't go there at all and I'm bored. The reason I didn't like the subject of this week's review is a mix of all these factors, but it's like untangling headphone cables without looking and writing through the knot. The more words I give to these feelings, the more they feel allowed. And then, the more I think about, the less it makes any sense. Last weekend, we got to visit Copenhagen for the first time after an invitation from literal broadsheet newspaper Politiken, who wanted us to speak to a group of writers they were mentoring. It was swanky and quick, and we ended up with the whole weekend to just play in the city and pretend to be our own Travel Man episode via Instagram stories. In between climbing up the astronomical tower, eating Danishes lol, stumbling upon a full-blown bagpipe competition in the middle of a star-shaped fortress, watching Liverpool win the Champions League, and buying sunglasses in weekday, we did, in fact, go to a gallery. There was also a good moment in McDonald's though, when the food came via a magical hanging conveyor belt from the kitchen upstairs, and it felt like it was the future. Anyway, back to our job. The gallery was called Den Frie Udstilling, out on the edge of the city centre, or, you know, it was past where most of the shops were. I had to know the details. Our visit coincided with a 4-day exhibition by a group called Skenetet, who had recreated an installation by Nam June Pak called Symphony for 20 Rooms. I CBA for the history of this. I don't care. For me, the history didn't come into it on the day, so it's not going to change the way I feel in retrospect, if I am being honest. To quote Love Island 2019, it is what it is. And what we walked into was a nightmare I think I've brought on myself, because all I've been calling for is exhibitions to have a bit of a kick to them, and this one somehow managed to take it too far. In the first big room, there were a million instruments for anyone and their kids to pick up and start hammering. There were some professional musicians planted to kick it off or keep it going, but also just random people. One woman was lying face down on the floor doing a bad plank, the weirdo. In the next room, there were 2 pianos and yet more instruments you could use to make big, big noise. When I walked through, a few adults were drumming the top of one of the pianos, and it sounded shit. Following on from that, and I mean following because there were no doors between these spaces, which is important, was a room lit faintly red with a cage for tiny, real songbirds who got flustered and flew from tree to tree anytime a visitor tried to Instagram themselves posing in front of them. This room was a bit interior designed. Oh, hashtag interior designed. With a carpet, couch, statues and telephone. As if the bad-sounding music participation wasn't enough, they had to throw little birds into the mix, didn't they? I could still hear the first room from where I was standing. Stress. In the next gallery space was like piles of materials. One mound of dirt, some chunky gravel slate, and a load of crispy sticks. Visitors could just do what they want with the contents here, so someone had planted a branch in the dirt like a flag. A kid was stamping on the rocks. Serena climbed onto the twig mountain and jumped off. I felt too cynical to partake. We moved on. Second to last was a room with, firstly, a shower cubicle with the door closed, running fast with water, and then besides that, a chicken coop with 3 actual chickens looking like they had no fucking clue what was going on, and a visitor walking after them trying to pick them up. On the wall opposite, tapes were moving and sound playing, but yeah. Shower, chickens, and more bad sound all in one room. I know this is the weirdest exhibition description, but it was literally this. And finally, connecting the chicken room and the first awkward interactive orchestra room was a dark corridor with amps and sound mixers playing multiple different tunes and noises. And I'm not going to lie, I turned every single one of them off because I couldn't see a security camera and I was losing my mind. So, why did I hate this exhibition with all my soul, you ask? It might be something to do with the fact that in my wise old age of 24, I find participatory art confrontational and I want nothing to do with it. Also, when it comes to music, I have no talent I can bring to the table, so why would I want to ruin anyone else's experience? Mostly, though, the fact artists had thrown live animals into a show where visitors could just grab them or murder a saxophone next to their cage felt so surreal and backwards. I'm not even a vegetarian, so hello, fully aware I'm a hypocrite in eating the animal kingdom and moaning about this online, but here we are. I wanted to wear noise protectors, and also I didn't want to be there. I wanted the chickens to wear noise protectors, and I didn't want them to be there either. I can't believe so much madness was brought into one gallery, and I know this is a recreation of a past artwork, but I can't really see the need in bringing it back. You know that thing that happens at workshops or maybe university icebreakers or something, where an organiser puts out a huge blank roll of paper and everyone's invited to draw on it? It'll have some mindfulness purpose or a prompt like, what makes you happy? And you naively think, wow, together we might be able to create something amazing. But no, it always ends up looking shit. That's what's going to happen when randomers pick up instruments and have a go. As we were leaving and enjoying the quietness of the air outside, Zarina started a good rant about how fascism is the complete obliteration of an oppositional existence and how participatory art obliterates any experience of the art beyond the experience prescribed by the artist. Both insist on a singular interpretation, so therefore this exhibition was fascist. That's a funny point, I don't remember making that. It's a relief on the entirety of Denmark that this show was only on for 4 days. Gabrielle, that's so rude. My poor ears. The poor chicken's ears. Do chickens have ears? I don't know, reader, but God bless them too. Hello. It is Sunday, 29th of August 2021. I'm ZM, and this week's text on the White Pube is a review of Eileen Bailey's show called Versions at Wysing Arts Centre down in Cambridge. I think this show has already closed by now, which I'm really sorry about. I normally hate writing about shows late by the time they're closed. It's really unhelpful. But if you do like feel curious about what I'm on about, or want to have a look for yourself, or it's interesting, and I think Wysing have done a pretty good job of documenting it online, so have a look at their website. I'll link it in the end notes. But yeah, sorry about that. Also, I should mention the White Pube is independent and proud to be reader supported on Patreon. So if you would like to support the work that we do, the writing and all the other bits, then you can do so at patreon.com/the White Pube. You can chip in for as little as £1 a month and we will send you a little postcard. But if you want a sticker, then that is unfortunately £3 or £5 a month. But I think they're well worth it. They're really fucking cool stickers, okay? I'm really proud of the stickers. What am I on about? So awkward talking about the Patreon. Okay, all right, enough about that. So yeah, patreon.com/the White Pube. If you can, if not, do not worry about it, my friend. Straight to the review, please. Thank you. The first room is the foyer of Wysing Arts Centre. The back wall is painted buttercup yellow, and there is a screen mounted on it with text rolling on a buttercup yellow backdrop. There are song lyrics printed on the long window. The second room is the main gallery with the ramp up. There's a felt feel bottle green carpet and the walls are clean and white. Little sculptures hang from the ceiling, ackee fruits, each slightly different. A screen hangs down, text rolling on bottle green. The third room is the rickety shack out in the field behind the centre. Chunky speakers, benches. There's a screen mounted up on the railed balcony, yellow text rolling across a black backdrop. I am unfortunate because I'm completely unable to conceptualise sound. It is so foreign and abstract to me. I am amazed by musicians, DJs, anyone who is able to organise sound or think about it in a linear way, because to me, it is liquid chaos. Throughout those 3 rooms, Eileen Bailey has laid out a spread. For this review of Eileen's show, Versions at Wysing Arts Centre, I want to talk about generosity, overlap, and liquid. The first yellow room sounds raucous when I walk in. Voices and noises chime in over each other, like bells pealing, when they cascade in time, just tumbling towards you. The voice is rough, chesty. There's a kind of raw, ripping feeling to it, like when you raise your voice to the edge of a shout. And sighs from the throat, ragged thumps. A body is moving, feeling, and we are listening to the resonant sound of it. It separates out, or maybe I just settle into the rhythm of it. I can now pick out a single voice. Elaine Michener performing Linstead Market, a Jamaican folk song, and it is so sweet. It is music, but it is also feeling and memory and history, and maybe I am just a bit wet, but things like that always get me. So I feel a little tear in the corner of my eye because Elaine's voice is hitting me bang in the middle of my chest. The second green room is filled with sound, demure and spacious. It is like a tingling. It booms and pops, crackles and sparkles at times too. This feels like sound that has moved from the chest to the fingers, toes. It is outer extremities, slender, agile. I think that description makes it sound cold, but it's not. It is a kind of sizzling hot, but a low down, contained sizzle. The sounds are Eileen making ackee and saltfish. These sounds have been pulled up, treated as material, arranged and composed, stretched out on loop. The ackee fruit sculptures hanging from the ceiling are pendulums, and I lie on my back and look up at them. They were made by Martha Todd, and I play Spot the Difference. Imagine them swinging, swaying gently in the breeze. The third room, out in the little rickety shack, is like a contained theatre. Like old school Polly Pockets, where there's a whole compact world that can fold right out of a hard plastic handbag. Ian has used three tracks made by Matthew Ritson for the bass line in this room, blended them into a bigger composition and made an homage to dub. The sounds are heavy, slapping, continuous, a rolling bass that comes at you like waves. The pops over top are heavier now. They tick over like they're moving, and they're laced with a kind of crackling that glitters with meaty thickness. The sounds are the world, full on the inside, folding out. I sit on the bench, feeling like I am in a bathtub, like I am floating in something. The sound has a different quality, like it is shifting in front of me, or like it is a collection of single units that interchange and come together, only to drift back apart. Like a bike chain rolling over that spiky little wheel, many moving parts as one. Throughout these three rooms, there is a text accompanying the sound, rolling over the screens like end credits. They are translations written by Taylor Lamel. Taylor offers an interpretation, conversation, likeness. The little description of the show explains that the text translations are part of an exploration of how sound works can be made more accessible for capital D and small d deaf audiences. It feels like a meta zoom out from myself. I often think about how I want to describe an artwork to you, the reader, in these reviews. How do I describe what's in the room? What language do I use to convey? And how do I approach building the scene of what I experience in the gallery? How much do I add or lose by transferring to text? I think rendering artwork as text is a weird and unstable kind of production. You're half making something that runs parallel or orbits that artwork, but something has been spirited into being all the same. That parallel production of artwork renders as text sits somewhere alongside fan fiction, tribute act, parody, as well as translation or interpretation. This instability is exciting, and it makes me feel like a kind of magician, able to pull sleight of hand and showmanship into it all. I don't know what Taylor's writing process looked like for those texts, but I can imagine them at a table with headphones on and eyes closed, typing like a conductor, like sound was just flowing from their ears straight down to their fingertips, like possession or like body-brain-word daisy chain. I can also imagine a painstaking process, Taylor pacing a room with a printout in hand, scratching out lines and reworking them so they're perfect, but maybe also something accumulative, returning every time a thought pops up, letting thoughts drift in and out, waking up in the middle of the night to write down a line before it dissolves back into that dreamy haze, or iterative, approaching an idea from multiple possible angles, trying on likeness in the hopes that taking a few run-ups at description will build a more accurate scene through simile. Maybe there's an aspect of fiction to it. Something is built there. Maybe it is story. Maybe it is a scene. I think version is a display of generosity because it is sound as a material laid up against other things that make it more accessible. And I mean accessible in many possible ways. If sound is a chaotic liquid or language I'm not fluent in, then sculpture, text and scene setting are offered out to me as a guiding hand to help me on my way. If sound is something I struggle to grab onto, this is a generous way for me to engage with it. I'm glad that Eileen has taken the time to figure out where the limits of the sound she's wrangling with might be, figure out how to extend those limits further, and do so by pulling other makers in. Extending it out in that way is nothing but pure generosity, because it is building a space that is as full as possible. In that fullness, careful. It extends itself as possibility, to peel away as I need, want, or would like. It offers a word I have been avoiding for the length of this review, because maybe deploying it as a descriptor here would be a trite punchline. But versions. Hello, okay. I'm seeing you out the door. Thank you for listening. And again, I'm so sorry to our readers, our listeners, our supporters on Patreon and PayPal. I'm sorry that this isn't a new text. I really feel like a sense of... When you've been doing a new text every Sunday for 7.5 years, like it's such a routine for us, I can't help but feel like this unavoidable sense of guilt or, just stress about having to slow down, even though we need to. It's not willing. We need to. I can't help but feel like a real palpable sense of like, oh my God, like we've got to publish every Sunday. We don't. For some reason, we've made it the law, but apologies. I think there will be a new text, not next Sunday. That'll be the Creators Grant, but the Sunday after, hopefully, I believe. Thank you again for listening. Hopefully this has been an interesting thing to listen to about sound. Hopefully that has made sense as a curatorial framework. I'm not sure. Thinking about it as a curatorial framework makes me nervous. But, bits and bobs. Hopefully it's all made sense together. I think so. The emoji to please comment will be the ear emoji or the tear emoji, because J. Paul Supremacy, tears, but also sound. Either or, whichever one takes your fancy, surprise me. And then just plop that on the Instagram or on the Twitter. Let me know. Just so that it's like a little fun game. For no reason other than to satisfy our own curiosity about how many people are actually reading things on the site, because we don't have Google Analytics installed anymore. I don't know the numbers and I don't want to. But yeah, I hope you have a good weekend or good rest of your weekend. And I will catch you next time. Love you lots. Goodbye.